on a macro level, envision a society where race and gender don't predetermine wealth, right? And start something that, again, that statement is a vision, right? We're living in between actually starting a business to address that and the broader vision of society that could exist. I think as a founder, you have to be the one comfortable in the uneasiness or lack of clarity on how to actually turn the vision into reality.
Can you do me a favor? Can you look in the camera and say like, comment, and subscribe?
Like, comment.
Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. To my grandson's channel. Say like, comment, and subscribe to my grandson's channel.
Like, comment, and subscribe to my grandson's channel.
You heard it. Okay, so today I have my friend Jason Ray on. He is the president and chief investment officer at Zenith Wealth Partners. I guess I should have asked this in the beginning. Can I call you Jay during this, or do you go by Jason professionally?
Jason, Jay Ray,
Okay, I know you as Jay
works.
Ray. Okay, good. Yeah. I didn't want to slip up while we were talking. So you and I met through my friend. I call it same thing. I call him Kyle. I knew him as Kyle. He goes by James professionally. So we met through my friend James Kyle Boyd. We've played basketball together for years now. So Jay Ray, thank you for doing this today. I appreciate it. Before we get into this, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. And no, thanks for having me. It's been a great relationship that has spanned from our meeting through James Kyle Boyd. We got to hoop, more often here. But no, I grew up in Michigan, kind of in the Detroit suburbs. I moved out to the East Coast about 15 years ago to go to school in Jersey. Have lived in Philly for about 11 years. And yeah, started a business 6 years ago. Married. I met my wife in college. We've got 2 kids now in Philly. And yeah, just still trying to figure it out, man, but it's a pleasure to be here and I'm excited to dive in deeper.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this. So, but before we start to talk professionally, I have a question. So you say you went to college in Jersey. You went to Princeton, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. You played football there?
I was a football player. We had a good run. I picked the school mainly because when I was being recruited, the existing coach got fired. So for me, it seemed like a good opportunity to come in and play as a freshman and not, have a coach that had favorites that were upperclassmen. And that played out. So I played all 4 years. We were pretty bad my first 2 years, but we ended up winning the Ivy League championship my senior year. So it was a great run. The school didn't make it any easier. They still, overloaded me with assignments and reading and learning. But, we made it through. We made it through.
All right. So I bring that up because I'm curious. So as a fellow D1 athlete myself, I've talked about this before. I was a scout team player on the women's basketball team at Drexel. So technically a D1 athlete, I'll die on that hill. I'm curious, do you think that being an athlete shaped your view or like how you viewed your potential professional career?
I think so. I think it's kind of like teaches you how to, particularly team sports. And I play some other individual sports like golf is a good example. But, with team sports, like leadership, it's not about being in charge, right? It's about taking responsibility for the outcome, even when no one's watching. And I think as you go about that in your professional career, particularly as an entrepreneur and a founder like myself, that quality was really, I think, embedded in me as an athlete, kind of like, yes, there are vocal leaders on teams. There are people who lead by example. You got to know your role and your position. Anybody can be a leader. It's not just about who's the captain, but it's about who shows up and kind of who does the things that need to be done to win. And that plays out in business, whether you're in a big corporate environment or you're at a small startup like ours.
I love that. And I was obviously joking about the D1 athlete thing, but I'm curious. I've found a lot of my friends that played sports in college tend to gravitate towards the finance field. Do you think it's the competitive nature? What do you think? Or you know what? I shouldn't ask you to generalize. What drew you into the field?
Yeah. I wish I had a more sophisticated answer. I can tell you about why I'm still in it. But originally, when I was interviewing as a college student, I didn't want my internship to get in the way between my junior and senior year, to get in the way of like me exercising and working out with my team. But I wanted to get significant professional experience. And, Lincoln Financial Group in the Philly area was an internship that I applied for. And they were actually very accommodative with me, like living on Villanova's campus, having access to their facilities and ability to work out with their team. And then, ability to kind of travel back to Princeton to work out with my team that summer. So that was a primary driver of me picking the internship and just getting
Okay.
there. I loved it. You know, I loved our work in educating financial advisors and other intermediaries between people that are investing their money in kind of capital markets. And I love the outcomes that people were creating for their clients. Like it brought the advisors a lot of joy. It brought the clients a lot of joy to see client success. And money is such a big part of society and our futures and the way that we live our lives. And to shape it in a way that really creates a good emotion from somebody was really interesting. So I think I've stayed in it because of that. There's also almost like an inherent merit-based quality, I think, in financial services because the outcomes can be so tangible. How much money did you raise? How much money are you managing? How much revenue are you bringing in? So being able to, you know, kind of earn compensation and earn, you know, kind of wealth creating opportunities for yourself are really based on, you know, the amount of clients or the amount of products or the amount of money that you manage. Like there's a one-to-one or can be a one-to-one relationship there that I think is more clear than in other industries. So I like that. I like the harder I work, the more money I can potentially make, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that piece of it draws a lot to answer your question about like generalizing. Like I think that piece of it draws a lot of athletes into the field because it's pretty clear.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I'm curious, maybe we could get to this and so makes sense why you got into the field. I understand why you're still into it, while you're still in it. What drew you into the entrepreneurial side of things? I know it's kind of the next level of what you just talked about, where you're performance-based compensation in the field, but now it's like you're on your own. Not you're on your own. I know you have a great team with you, but the idea of it's really sink or swim when you start in the entrepreneurial space. So I'm curious, what made you make the jump, and a little bit about the history there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like being a founder means living in the tension between vision and reality. And,
Okay.
you know, I've always been somewhat of a dreamer, you know, and
Okay.
like I've always thought that, you know, I could contribute to outcomes that I wanted to see. And it's hard for me to get behind people that, you know, I don't believe in, right? From like a values standpoint. So, you know, I was working in the industry. I had some great roles at Lincoln Financial, FS Investments, and Carnegie Wealth Management. And a few things just became clear. One, you know, most advisors in the business were all trying to serve like a very similar client, your old retiree or your large institution, right? And two, the best advisors they weren't the smartest people. They had the best EQ. They just had a way about them that was easy to trust and get along with. Um, so in kind of recognizing these things in my time, the first half of my career, and really working with advisory firms directly to understand their businesses and help them implement solutions that, you know, the firms that I was at were offering, it just became clear that one, I could do the work, and two, I could, you know, get out of sellout mode where I was doing this kind of for high net worth people and really serve the people that I care about that are underserved in society, right? And not only address micro demands from my friends and family, but also on a macro level, you know, envision a society where race and gender don't predetermine wealth, right? And start something that, again, like that statement is a vision, right? We're living in between like actually starting a business to address that and the broader vision of society that could exist. I think as a founder, you know, you have to be the one comfortable in the uneasiness or lack of clarity on how to actually turn the vision into reality, right? A lot of folks need reality, right? So being able to set like, hey, this is where we're going and here's the path to get there. And here's other people around this bigger vision that are, you know, implementing this. It's not just me sitting here dreaming, but we've got co-founders and we've got people that will actualize this process.
Mm-hmm.
So as we've gone along over the last 6 years, it's really been about those people, right? You know, how do we attract, retain, and really invest in some of the best talent that the industry should see and make sure that people understand what that vision is? Because I think that's what people get excited about, right? I wouldn't have gone to Princeton to play football if I didn't think we could win an Ivy League championship, you know? And like, sure, the road was rocky, but without that kind of framing point and that goal in mind, I wouldn't have showed up.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So that's awesome. Let me ask you, now that you're on this side of things. So, and when I say this side of things, I mean on the entrepreneurial side. there's much more to the business than the actual work that you're doing or what you aim to do to achieve that. Do you find yourself gravitating towards the company management side or the business side of things versus the, and sorry if I don't articulate this properly, but like the finance side of things, or the role that you had previously that you're doing in this different customer base? But is my question making sense? Like the difference of having to actually manage your company versus doing the role that you did previously. Do you find yourself gravitating towards one way or the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love being an entrepreneur and I love giving advice. So,
Okay.
those are two different skill sets though, right? Like, being a great advisor does not mean that you're a great business owner, right? Being a great
Mm-hmm.
business owner certainly doesn't mean you're a great advisor. So I really have worked to surround myself with expert advisors, because I felt confident and I felt a lot of excitement in like starting a business, getting it up and running, going from 0 to 1, right? Like that's what is Obama's quote, like the best way to not feel hopeless is to get up and do something. Like I just feel like I really enjoyed, okay, well, I have this thought, like, all right, let's formalize this and start it and, optimize the business so that people can, also be excited about joining the team. And there's like a little bit of infrastructure there. But at that point, really building it to surround myself with expert advisors who are very good at delivering advice, are certified, right? Really care about showing up the right way for their clients. I'm surrounded by really excellent professionals. And, I think that also gives me the space to think about how to move into new markets, right? How to try to close larger opportunities and, work for our firm, how to think about more deeply investing into our people, right? Those are things that you have to work on as a business. Otherwise, you're going to be left obsolete. And it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be possible if I wasn't surrounded by expert practitioners and operations professionals that are helping us, really streamline our operations and our ability to even show up to do the work for the clients.
That's great. What is something, so imagine you're talking to someone who has no idea what you do, what your advisor firm does. What would you say that is probably the most surprising thing about your role? This could be day to day, this could be overarching strategy like you just talked about. What do you think to the layperson would be the most surprising thing about your role?
Yeah, I just how much it changes, right? Like at least for me, starting a company, we started from nothing. It's not like I brought a business from somewhere else and made it independent and my own. It was really grassroots. The skill set to operate in years 0 to 2 versus 2 to 5 versus 5 to now are completely different. I've changed, and that is extremely surprising. I thought it would just be, me in founder mode trying to innovate as much as possible forever. And, it's actually kind of being able to lead with clarity, empathy, and follow through. And, innovation will come and go. But those core skills that are EQ focused, as I mentioned, are really the ones that have stayed the most consistent and been the least surprising over time. And it's interesting to think that I didn't really expect that in the beginning, even though I had noticed about the industry, like the best people just had the best EQ. So, I think there's the change that comes from just evolution and time. I think I was also relatively young as somebody starting a business. So I've also grown. I've had 2 kids since starting the business, right? I've gone deeper into marriage, met new people and had new experiences, right? So those things, I feel like I wasn't done growing up yet
Yeah,
either. I'm probably still not,
I'm
but
with you. I'm with you,
yeah,
man.
yeah, I think that has been one of the more surprising things about doing this.
I love that insight. I normally say this to the end, but I'm curious just to keep building off of this. What do you think is next in that evolution for you and your business?
Yeah. Good question. I feel like I keep throwing out quotes, but I try to read like Maya Angelou was like, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you do know better, do better, So
Yeah.
I just, I don't know. I just have to keep showing up and doing the work. And, I think one thing that has driven a lot of my career and just outside of our work at Zenith, I volunteer for 4 incredible 501c3 organizations Loves Creek Foundation, Untours Foundation, community partnerships, and Students Run Philly Style. And all of those opportunities have come just because I've been asking questions and curious about the work and leading with my own personal values. And, I think listening to our customers and to our team has taught me a few things recently about Zenith that I am extremely curious about, and one of them is just our charge to create $1 billion in wealth for our clients. Most of our clients are people of color, women, and institutions that serve them. So as we create wealth, we really feel that's an expression of us addressing racial and gender-based wealth inequality, right? And the drivers of this and how we measure this is a family's balance sheet, their net worth going up, right? From when they started with us to now, how much investment earnings an organization that makes grants or programs, like how much earnings they have. And then the value of the businesses, of the business owners that we're advising. So there's 3 methods. We just crossed 100 million on our way to $1 billion. So we got a long way to go, but good milestone. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The Brookings Institute came out with this study about a year ago that canvassed Federal Reserve data and was shining light on kind of the wealth disparities that exist by demographic here in the US. And they came to this conclusion, and the Federal Reserve did too, and I think Brookings put in maybe a more like digestible fashion, that the key drivers of wealth creation are real estate ownership inequity and business ownership inequity, right? So as we think about those 3 levers that I just mentioned, the last one about businesses becoming more valuable and how capital markets can work for businesses to become more value, accessing credit, finding long-term investors, raising money from outside sources, using internal profits to generate growth and invest for the future. These are critical questions that entrepreneurs have to ask and also need access to. So as we think about how we accelerate the most wealth creation possible, net worth accumulation is pretty linear. It's relatively predictable as well, right? The institutional kind of investment earnings is market linked, right? Equity markets kind of drive that. The business ownership, it's relatively exponential. Like somebody, is running their business for a few years and then raises money at some new valuation or valuation cap. Now they've gone from $0 of their ownership to like a priced, it could be millions of dollars, right? So those jumps and like those abilities to, grow business value and ultimately transact them seems like a really interesting way for us to lean into. But historically, that hasn't been at the root of our offering. So how do we lean into that and listen to the market telling us that they want more of that advice and access, but also continue to innovate and serve the existing clients that we have and the existing client demographics that we want to meet is a balancing act, right? But I think as, we think about what's next, particularly for me in my role, it's like, make the balance, like continue to innovate and drive like great service and explore these new markets in a way that seems cohesive and still paints that vision to the team. So yeah, that's where I would say my role's headed. But, and if you ask me in a month from now,
it may change.
It may change.
I firmly believe that's the right mindset to have too. I also love how you're like, I ask you a question and you're like, oh, I'm sorry to just give you a quote. And then you give me this really thoughtful and insightful answer. So I think that was a fantastic answer and really good insight. So one thing I want to make sure I ask you about this, it's something you and I have never talked about this, but you mentioned it in your answer just there. I've seen your endeavors on LinkedIn. One thing that I've always been passionate about too is financial literacy, and some of the nonprofits you work for, I see what you're attempting to achieve there is I've certainly not to the scale that you're doing it at, but I've always had a passion for trying to help others. I always found financial problems are something that are so easy to get into and so difficult to get out of. It's not something they teach in schools, and it's one of those things that you can make a mistake, but that mistake can follow you or haunt you for a very long time. And I'm talking basics. I mean, like targeting how much of your income to save, how much to invest, measuring net worth, looking at how much of your income should be going towards utilities or necessities versus fun. So I've always been super passionate about that. I've always looked to help people in that space. So I'm curious from your perspective, when you partner with these 501c3s, which I love, how do you go about it? I know that you've joined some boards. I know, what are you looking to achieve there as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, financial education, just awareness, to your point, can be a key driver of many things, right? We're looking at, an environment now. We're about to see, public food benefits expire in a few days, the SNAP benefits. And, you look at like healthy eating and social determinants of health. Much of this is derived from people living at or below the poverty line, right? If we didn't have that, folks may not need SNAP benefits, right? If there was more even distribution of income and wealth, right? So doing everything that our firm can and I can personally to ensure that people are financially aware and able to take advantage of tools, resources, objective advice to, put themselves on good financial footing it's critical, I think, for the success of society and, also for just like general well-being.
Yeah.
So I'm a strong believer in, volunteering time to do that, right? That's why I serve on these boards that I do. I'm the treasurer on 2 of them and operate in that capacity. That's not something that's a volunteer position, right? And like I'm doing it because like I want this organization to be able to achieve the objectives it set out to achieve. And most of those are like helping people and pulling people up, right? So,
That's
I
great.
think our business is a great expression of just like wanting to also deliver the education, maybe as an objective advisor, a paid objective advisor. But I would say, paid or unpaid, the value of having an objective perspective goes beyond just your finances too in life, right? Like it's good to have outside perspectives on relationships, athletics, right? Whatever areas of your life that you care about. And, I don't think that's any different for your money, right? You got to have outside opinions because the decisions are very emotional, particularly for a family, but also for nonprofits and foundations, right? There are emotional attachments and biases that go into these decisions, and having an external perspective, I think, is really critical for success. Not the only thing, but it is really critical for success.
That's great. I agree with you. Okay, so that leads me to the namesake of this series, If I Knew Then. So I always frame this as it could be for you as an individual, if there were areas or things that you wish you knew sooner along your career journey, or is there a piece of advice that you would give someone who's looking to potentially follow in your footsteps or make a career pivot?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the latter.
Okay.
And, stay curious is number one, right? I think asking questions, formulating thoughts and inquiring about things is a great way to connect to people and show people that you care and that you're trying to learn. So in your career, staying curious and, always, being early and fast to ask questions is critical. I actually recently heard, you may appreciate this, in the quarterbacks room for the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers used to fine Jordan Love when he was quiet in meetings, like he wanted him to speak up and ask questions. So he would fine him if he was quiet. And like that's kind of, I think, the perspective you got to take. Like, all right, if I go to this meeting or I'm at this event and they open up for questions and I'm just sitting there, like I'm getting fined, because like that isn't helping your career. It's not helping your learning, right? We've got to have more thoughtful discourse in society. So asking provocative questions even further, I think, is part of my advice. The second piece of advice, career changers, I think it goes back to one of the quotes I read earlier about Obama, is just like, just try something, just do something. It doesn't have to be like me, like quit your job and start something from scratch and you're not really sure if it works. That's a serious, that I had a lot of confidence at that point that I was doing something right. But in order to build up to that, I tried things. I got people's feedback, right? I tried to build something. I took small steps to gain that confidence. And I think if you're trying to make a change, there's a lot we could do in this digital kind of age of AI to learn new skills and to position yourselves for new experiences, new careers, and new relationships. So just try things, try to build something, the vibe coding right now that's available in market, even just having dialogue with, your friends that are working in different industries and, maybe working on a research project with them. I think some of these things, are easily attainable and can provide like really critical lessons.
That you said you would start with the latter. Is there another thing that you had on your If I Knew Then for you
yeah.
personally?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing I just feel like in starting a business, I talked to a few people, but it is something that I feel could have been done in a larger group setting. And, people joined in early and I was able to get lucky with some early people, right? But in looking back, kind of getting started and trying to get group consensus on the idea and the business and starting it with a group of people rather than kind of going one by one and having, multiple people in the beginning really kind of share that initial sacrifice is really like a huge learning for me. And as I think about the firm in our next state or taking the next step or whatever, I want to do it with, a much bigger group of people, because I think you get three benefits from that. More brain trust, right? You can bounce ideas off of each other, diverse perspectives, right? Age, demographics, geography, all these like characteristics that drive kind of diverse thinking. Like the more people, the more opportunity you have for that. And then lastly, like, discourse, right? Like having people disagree, if managed appropriately, really, I think goes a long way. So, that is a key learning that I would take into if I were to do this again and I already knew this, or if I was telling somebody else to get started, or as we think about partnerships and kind of Zenith 2.0.
That's great hindsight. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. All right, this has been awesome. Before we wrap up, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, check us out. Zenithwealth.partners is our URL. So come take a look. Don't forget to take a look at the Cobbs Creek Foundation, Untours Foundation, Students Run Philly Style, Vetri Community Partnership. These are great organizations you should get involved with. If you like golf, Cobbs is great. If you like healthy eating, Vetri Community Partners is the way. If you like to run, Students Run Philly Style is an incredible shop. And if you really care about mission aligned investing like me, Untours Foundation is a great place to look. So appreciate you having me here, Ant. People can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just Jason Ray. Instagram, I'm J Michael Ray. YouTube now, since you're saying it, I'm just Jason Ray. So
all right,
come take a look. And I appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much for doing this, man. I'm happy for your success. I wish you continued success. Good luck with the next 5 to 10 year chapter of Zenith Wealth Partners. Hopefully we'll talk again soon. Hopefully we'll be playing ball again soon.
Seriously.
All right. Thank you.